Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to cover some of the beading supplies you will need specifically for bead boxes. The supplies are pretty universal for most bead things, but there's a few things that you definitely need for bead boxes over other beading things. So to start out with, the first thing that I recommend is a beading mat. These are foam. I've seen silicone. I've seen kind of some felt. They come in different sizes. This is like a 12 by 9. They make a square one. This was one of my first ones, which is why it's all torn up. These help your beads stay in place. If you use little piles of them, they don't bounce all over the place. If you drop beads, they tend to stay on your bead mat. The couple other options that you could get. There are these bead trays. I have seen lots of people use these, either these metal ones or they use ceramic ones. You put your beads in there, you pick up beads out of there. I have a terrible time picking up beads out of bead trays, which is why I don't use them. However, these are great to pick your beads up when you're done and put them back in their container. There's also a ceramic or porcelain bead tray like this. Aesthetically, this is beautiful. I love it. I cannot pick beads up out of this very quickly, so it made my beading take 3 to 4 times longer than it should have, or than I was used to anyway. So I don't use this for beads. I actually use it as a display, and I have stuff in there. But if this works for you, it's a great way to keep your beads organized. Go for it. I've seen lots of videos of people using these, and they use multiples, and they'll keep each color in these. The other thing you can get, and I love this thing, this is, I believe it's called a bead scoop. I use this all the time. It is domed. Since I put my bead projects in I put each color in little piles, this lets me scoop those beads up and dump them back into their container. I also use it if I have a paper pattern. I will put this directly above whichever row I'm working on, and it helps me keep track. You can also use a ruler for that. That's fine. Since I use this all the time, it's what I have. So those are some basic bead stuff. You will need a pair of scissors. I don't remember where I got these. I can't find them. I will link everything in the description. Basically, any thread scissors work. They do, especially for boxes, they do need to be on the smaller side so you can get in there. I either need to get these professionally sharpened or I need a new pair because I've cut things I shouldn't, and so they're dented and dull. But these, I don't remember I wish I could remember where I got these because I would order another pair. So scissors. Optional is a thimble. I use one like this. I put it on this finger because that's where I push my needle. It works great. It's been a lifesaver. I didn't think, it didn't even dawn on me to use a thimble until a couple years ago. I don't know what I was thinking. It's best move ever. An optional thing that you can get is, if I can open it, this is the Perfect End thread burner. It won't work on natural threads like silk or some of the cotton threads, but it will basically melt the end of your thread if you can't quite trim it small enough or close enough to your work for your liking. You can just zap it with this. This is completely optional. It is not required to do anything with this. I've been beading for 15 to 20 years. I just got this about a month ago. It's fantastic. I love it, but it is not required. Honestly, the only things required to start beading are scissors, your needles, your beading thread, and then your beads. Nothing else is absolutely required. These other things are nice, but if you are just starting out, go with the necessities first and then branch out to things that you may need. On the subject of needles, these are the needles I use all the time. I buy these, honestly, these come from Walmart. They're like $2 or $3. You get 9 needles. I tend to use the size 11 and 12 most often. I have a lot of the size 10s floating around here, and I use them if I need to, but they're just a little too small. They bend and break a little too easily, so I don't use them as often, but you can. These are the Beading Jewel Loom needles. I have not actually used these yet. I do have a loom. I rarely use it. I wouldn't recommend these for boxes. I think they're a little too long. They look like they're bigger as well, but they are some needles that I have on hand. But definitely go with your size 11 or 12. You can there's a Tulip brand beading needle that's great. There's some other brands out there. As long as you have decent needles, they work wonders. You will bend and eventually break needles. It's just a part of beading. It's fine. Beading thread. These are only some of them. There's a couple that I don't have. This is Wildfire. This is from Beading. Wildfire. It is a braided nylon thread. I don't often use the Wildfire. I usually use one called Fireline. They're almost interchangeable. Fireline's a little bit more money, which is why I think at the time I bought Wildfire, because I was on a budget. This is the 0.006 inch or 0.15 millimeter. This is a little bit thicker than I generally use. I go down to the next size, which is a 0.004 inch, and I think it's a 0.13 millimeter. This is a great beginner thread, especially for boxes, because it's going to help you keep your tension tight. With these needles, this thread, especially in the size 0.15 millimeter, does not go through the size 10 needles at all. It's tricky to go through the 11. It goes through the 12 beautifully. Just something to keep in mind. The smaller size, both Wildfire and Fireline, I can get through the small needles. It's tricky, but you can do it. Both Wildfire and Fireline come in multiple colors. This is black. Fireline has a smoke, which is my favorite. It blends with everything. There's also one called a crystal, and it's a white. I think Wildfire might have a clear one. But like I said, it is a braided coated nylon thread. It works great. A couple of your other options. These are your KO beading thread. I don't remember the millimeter size on this, if there is one. It is also a lightly coated nylon thread. It does fray just a little bit if you're not careful. These work beautifully. These don't work quite as well for boxes, especially if you've never made one, because they don't hold the tension as well. But if you are going to do things like bracelets, this works great because it's very flexible. In a similar thing is this. It's some Japanese name. I cannot pronounce it. Like I said, I will link it in the description. This is also a lightly coated nylon thread. I think this is the 0.15 millimeter diameter. This stuff is fantastic. I love this stuff. These work great. I tend to buy this light gray over white or black because this light gray just blends so well with such a wide variety of colors. I do not remember why I bought this color. It's kind of a rosy gold. It'll blend nicely too. It might be that the gray was out of stock and I needed beading thread, so I just bought a couple of these. But that's one of your other color options. But like I said, I love the light grays. They're fantastic. Those are your basic supplies. Those are generic for no matter what you're making. Now, if you are specifically going to make boxes, you will need a very specific type of bead, and they are called delica beads. They are cut in such a way that they sit next to each other beautifully. They basically lock into place. They're almost like a little cylinder. They are fantastic. These are two different, you can tell they're two different finishes. These are more of a matte finish, which if you are a beginner, I would not recommend using the matte beads. They break just a little easier. They're fantastic colors. They're good to use later once you get the hang of things. If you're not doing boxes and you're doing bracelets with delica beads, matte beads are fine. You can use them for that. But because of the tension in the boxes, I would not recommend the matte beads for your first couple of boxes. These are an opaque, I think these called these a glazed luster. Any of the opaque beads, any of the opaque luster beads are great. They're your basic bead. These two come in 7.5 gram tubes. Beads are measured in grams. These came from Fire Mountain Gems. There's other companies out there. These beads came from High Street Bead Company. They are the exact same brand of beads. They just came from a different company. High Street Bead Company sells them by the gram, your minimum of 1 gram, which is apparently what I ordered this for. So they come by the gram. I think price, they're about the same between the two companies. High Street Bead Company is great if you want to order like the exact amount you need for a project and not have a lot of leftovers. I personally love leftovers, so they get used in other things. I always use the size 11 because that's what all of the box patterns call for. They make other sizes, but you would have to do some conversion because the grams are going to be different. Some patterns will say it uses this number of beads, which translates to this number of grams. If you're wanting to learn like a bracelet or something, you can use the round seed beads. They're a little bit cheaper. You can get a bigger size of those because the round seed beads come in larger sizes. I use these for bead crochet. So you will need 4 boxes specifically. You will need the delica beads. Delica beads are a little bit more money than the round seed beads, but that's because they are precision cut. Also, if you are doing boxes, you will need beads for your feet and your fennel. These are Swarovski crystal beads in 10 millimeter and 14 millimeter. These are specifically for a turtle box from Julia Pradel. She has 3 different size turtles. This is for the small turtle. This is for the head and the feet. That is the only box that I know of that specifically says to use what to use for your feet and head or feet and fennel, because the turtle box is very specific. Otherwise, you can use, these are round pressed check glass. I guess they're called check pressed glass beads. These are 4 millimeter. These are 6 millimeter. You can do, I mean, they make them smaller, I think. Maybe not in the round ones. They make them larger. This is what I use for feet and fennel on every box. I pick a color that is close to the box that I'm making. These generally come in strands of about 50 beads each. You can pick these up at just about any craft store. Michael's, Hobby Lobby, Joann's, whatever craft store you have around. You can also get smaller versions of the crystals. They do not have to be Swarovski. These happen to be Swarovski, but these are 4mm. If you want your feet and fennel to be just a little more shiny, add a little more pizzazz to your bead boxes. They also come in larger sizes. These are not Swarovski, but they are like a faceted crystal. And that is what I used on this bead box. This is the kaleidoscope box from Julia Pradel. I used it, you can see here, I used it on the lid and I used it on the feet. You do you. You absolutely don't have to add feet to your boxes. There's some of the box patterns that don't require it. There's a couple of boxes that you kind of need specialty beads for, specifically, well, the turtle, which I mentioned, and then the snowman box. I don't know where my beads are for that. The snowman box needs a different bead for the nose, and I had ordered like 50 of them several years ago. They were almost looked like a traffic cone bead, and those are no longer made. So when I run out of those, I think I have 3 or 4 left, I will have to do some hunting and find something. Otherwise, your basic supplies, like I said at the beginning, are your beading needles, your thread, your scissors, and then just make sure you have good light. I think that covers everything. If I missed anything or you have questions, please leave a comment. I'm linking all my socials. You can find me there and ask questions. You can see pictures of my work. And yeah, happy beading.